Good evening. How is everyone?
Well, thank you.
We just have two things on the agenda before we go, if that's okay.
Oh, no.
They're quick. They're really quick.
Approve the meeting minutes from February 10th.
I move that we approve the meeting.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Second.
Thanks, Jeff. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay. Do I have a motion to accept the meeting minutes from March 2nd for review?
Motion.
Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Okay, we're good. So, Southeast Regional School Budget.
All right, good evening, thank you.
How are you?
Good, good.
evening.
Welcome.
My name is Mark Morris. I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Finance at Southeastern Regional. I have with me tonight as well as Sue Sullivan, the representative from West Bridgewater. So I'll go through this at a high level. Stop me at any time. If there are any questions, feel free to wait to the end or ask me as we're going through it.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure I have the right budget
Okay.
here.
Should be maybe February
Regional-
13th at the top.
Yep,
Okay.
817,883. Is that
No,
right?
I'm sorry, what was the amount?
I think it's 817,883.
I'm sorry, is this what you have?
Oh, we're looking at the town.
We've got
Hundred
the
thousand.
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not sure.
That's not the ask?
I can skip right to that. if we
No,
want
no,
to.
no, that's okay.
817,883, that is the
Yep,
amount.
okay,
Yes.
all right, perfect.
All right, perfect, thank you.
Okay, so this is your presentation.
This is the presentation,
Okay,
yeah.
let's
Did
go
you just
there.
want to go over that amount, or did you want?
No, no,
to-
no,
Oh,
this is
perfect,
fine,
okay.
thank you.
All right, I'm not sure what you have.
Make sure we're in the
For
right
time,
place.
yeah, perfect.
That was my first page, so.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't have it.
That's
I'm sorry.
okay, thank you.
Okay, so yes, so as I stated, the FY23 budget was just voted on March 8th by the school committee, so it has been voted. And the total budget is $34,546,638. That's in the rose color, about 3/4 of the way down.
Yeah.
And I can go over how that's made up. So the foundation budget is $32,362,813. And if you look to the right, state aid is $20,178,271. And the local assessments from our 9 communities are $12,184,542. So that makes our foundation budget for FY23. And then part of the foundation budget as well, or part of the budget with the foundation budget is the transportation for our students. So being a vocational regional school, transportation is offered to all students, and we can't charge for that, so there's a fee, obviously. The total amount for transportation is $1,879,200, with state aid being $1,042,593. And this is where I kind of always remind you every year that you want to maybe talk to the legislatures, senators, congressmen, that's to be funded 100% by the state, but they've never funded it at 100%. So that being said, the difference, we take out of our local receipts, $284,000 for FY23, and local assessments to the towns would be $552,607. But if that was funded at 100%, there'd be no need for local receipts or local assessments. So again, if you do see a congressman or your legislator, just remind them, again, that should be, it's in the law, but there's always that little caveat, due to appropriation if it's available, obviously. Other expenditures are our capital costs. So since I've been presenting for the last 12 years, the cost to the towns are always, it's been $192,000. That's what we've always charged. And our total capital budget is $304,625, with the difference coming from local receipts, our adult education programs, $112,625. And that brings us to the $34,546,638. So it's an increase from last year of 3.9%.
Not bad.
Second page, obviously, our enrollment is up for FY23 by 7 students, and the town of West Bridgewater is up by 16 students. So we have 16 new students from the town of
Trending
West
up.
Bridgewater. Yes, it's gone down.
Everywhere.
FY20 to 21 went down a little, 21, 22 went up, 23's gone up again, yes. So that makes 3.9% of our total enrollment from the town of West Bridgewater. And then, I know you stole my thunder earlier, but yeah, the assessment ask is $817,883, a difference of $191,163. So this year you can see almost a direct correlation with student enrollment and the increase in assessments.
What is the per pupil?
So if you skip over one more page, you look there, it's roughly $20,500 per pupil.
What drives that?
I'm sorry?
What is the big driver for that?
Well, again,
Is it mostly because it's a VOTEC environment?
well, the cost of education, obviously, and then in a vocational school with machinery and equipment, those
Yeah.
things obviously a little more
Yeah, yeah,
expensive.
yeah.
But you can see, again, it costs every student the same, it costs the same amount for every student, and we broke that down in the pie charts. The only difference is how much money the state gives versus how much the actual community pays per student. And that's based on wealth, property values, things of that nature in the towns and in the city. On the very next page, you can see our Chapter 70 district profile. Again, we understand that the towns have a responsibility, we have a responsibility. We're at net school spending, so we're not asking for anything more than the required amount for net school spending in FY '23. We've been doing that, if you go back as long, again, I've been at the school since FY '09, but even back prior to that, it looks like it's always been at net school spending.
Meaning what the state requires.
What's required to educate the students, correct. Then the next few pages are just some information on the town of Brockton, your local enrollment, and different things, foundation budgets there. We just add that for informational purposes. I'd be more than happy to take any questions or.
I'm sorry, what is the per pupil net, what is the per pupil requirement from the state?
For vocational, for Southeastern Regional, it's 20,500. So if you go to that page of the pie chart, well, that looks like this.
Yeah.
So if you add up the state's portion and the town's portion or the city's portion, they all come out to 20,000. I think it's like 497. I just rounded it to 20,500.
So the state's telling you you have to spend 20.
That's what we, correct, per student. And then we
That's
just
all
broke,
in, everything.
and we just broke it down, the red being how much you actually get from the state, and the blue coming from the town or the city.
Do you have special education
We do.
issues as much as we would have here for the meeting?
When you say issues, what do you mean by?
What's up with that question?
It's a driving big cost.
It is a cost, because it's an unknown. So especially at Southeastern Regional, our application process is a blind enrollment. So when students apply, we don't know what their needs are. All we know is their attendance, their discipline, and their pass grades. That's how we determine their acceptance into the school. We don't know if there are any special needs, 504s, or whatever may be needed. So yeah, so that's always a cost that's unknown to us.
Is it something concerns you in terms of rising costs?
Again, it is always a concern, but we're there to educate all students the same. So we do our best, all, special ed, it's inclusive of all classrooms and shops. We don't treat the students aren't treated any differently in shop areas. We help them as much as we can. We give them the needs that they have in their 504s, or whatever it may be, and we find a way to make it happen.
How's the new auditorium?
I'm sorry?
How's the new auditorium?
Very nice. Have you had a chance to
Only
see
from
it?
the outset.
Oh, please, stop by whenever you have a chance, please. Before we're not center, there's actually, they're working on a new play coming up. I don't know the exact dates, but I can get back to you with that. But yeah, it's a beautiful space. It's a space that was needed. Again, we didn't have an auditorium per se, so it fits a lot of needs. And we're gonna have a community theater program running out of that space. It's gonna be very nice, very nice.
The restaurant's open to the public as well.
Oh, the Boot and Shovel, yes.
Room show. It's a very, very nice place.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh, you get the culinary,
Yes,
All
the
the
culinary
kids,
service.
it's fantastic.
doing the best they can.
Yeah,
Yes.
$5 lunch, you can't.
Yeah.
Can't beat
How many applications do you get?
So right now, we have over 1,100 applications for roughly just over 400 seats.
So it's by test.
No tests. Again, it's based on grades, attendance, and discipline is what the criteria is. And they're scored on that criteria, and then it just goes in order by those.
Discipline, you said?
Discipline, is attendance, and grades.
It's interesting to see that, Brockton and Mansfield went down so much and ours went up so much. So I was just curious. You have a lot of applications.
Yeah, again, over 1,000 right now at this
Yeah.
point, and we haven't finished taking applications yet, but right now, over 1,000 applications for 400 seats.
So once you're in, though, you can stay, or you have to
Correct.
apply
No,
again?
once you're in,
You
you
stay.
stay, correct.
You give siblings a preference?
There's no, again, we don't know, when students apply,
know.
we don't, it's a blind application
I
process.
guess, yeah.
That's the difference between that and school choice.
Yeah, school choice, again, if you had, again, we can't do school choice, because we don't have enough, we have more applicants than we have room,
Yeah.
so we can't take school choice.
But just to choose.
Oh, it's school choice, yeah,
School choice, so we
schools
can-
maybe, yeah, exactly.
37%, but that's because we have so many more
Students, yeah.
students.
Correct, that's, if you look at the numbers, you went from, what was it 48 to 64.
Right.
So that's a 33% change.
64.2.
64 because of October 1st numbers, so that's,
Just made 0.2 of a student.
it is a lot of times, I probably should just round, but if you don't round, it doesn't
even
add
answer
up to
it.
the
Don't
16.
answer it, I'm sorry.
It's just a mathematical equation.
He's just being-
Excel
Budget
just.
back.
So you're retiring?
Oh, the superintendent is, not myself. No, no.
Up front.
Yeah, August 10th, our superintendent's retiring in the Lopes, yes. We're in the process right now of, school committee's in the process of hiring a superintendent.
All right, any questions on this budget?
Not I.
No.
Yeah, if anything comes up, you know where to find me. But
Thank
please,
you so
take advantage,
much.
if you have a chance, let me know. I'd love to show you around Performing Arts Center. I'm sure Sue would do the same, but yeah.
Absolutely.
If you're ever in town or by Southeastern, feel free to stop by. Be
And
more
is
than happy to
lunch
show around.
every day or not every day?
It is every day. There are certain days like with MCAS and testing, things of that nature, that may be limited hours.
Yeah.
But for the most part, it's every day.
You can go online and find the menu.
The menu's
It's
on.
fantastic.
You got $5 lunch coming up?
It's clicking though, huh?
Go on.
It's clicking.
Absolutely.
You're not gonna get a better deal than that.
Well, seniors.
Oh, I'm
Yeah.
so sorry.
That's
All right.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
All right, thank you very much. Have a
Have a
good
great
night.
night.
All right, take care.
Nice to see
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
Thank you,
in.
Mrs. Sullivan.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Nice to see you guys. Thank you.
Nice to see you.
Bye. Good luck.
Bye. What do we got next? What time is the school coming?
So they're scheduled for 7. I just texted Mark and told him we're ahead of schedule.
Do you want to start going through some of the smaller ones? Fine.
Are they in today's packet or should we go back?
Oh, no, they're at the end, Cheryl.
I hear a crowd.
Yeah.
Maybe we can sneak the moderator in.
So the moderator's level fund is $588.
Sounds easy. Any questions on that one?
No.
Insurance, they told us the budget of 4% increase. Again, I think it's pretty reasonable. Seal of weights and measures, the only change, the real, is the 2% increase in the salary. Again, the small budget's only $6,000, so it's a $100.
Does that work?
First Department of David Moore, you have to be certified to do it.
Okay.
Next one is Historical Commission, level funded at $1,750.
And that, doesn't look like we spent too much of that.
No, they don't always spend a lot. And the last one is benefits, it's up 5.2%. That is chiefly driven by our health insurance and our retirement. One thing of note, these budgets are due by the end of January, and the state certifies the retirement contribution at the end of February. So when I put it together and turn it in, I have to guess, I'm off by about 26 grand, which I thought for $3 million, that was pretty good, but, so I'm just letting you know, I got a tweak.
Is it gonna go up by
Yeah, it's
26?
it's, So I have to put in that final number when I present the final budget.
Okay, is that related to the retirement?
That is correct. So we get assessed that from Plymouth County every single year. And once it gets certified, they send it over.
So contribution to retirement went up 7, but now more than 7, because we have to add this one.
Yep. So it'll be like 7.1 or 7.2. I
Okay.
will tell you, that budget is expected to go up close to 8% every year until 2033.
That's because it was underfunded.
That is correct.
Yeah, they really did.
So in
What are
20
you getting up for the health insurance? Is that an estimate, 4%?
We have received in the final numbers, and 4% should be the right number.
Okay. It's not too bad,
I agree.
health insurance.
No, I agree.
Okay.
No.
And then the last one is, I just put in capital budget report, just so you guys could see it. You're well represented, as you know, Jeff and Jim are on it. And who's the first person, Scott? So they have been there, so if you have questions for them. But we heard all the presentations last week. And then tomorrow, the committee will get together and vote. on their recommendations to the selectmen. Selectmen will review it in April, but again, this is just an FYI so you can see what the requests are.
We don't have enough fully fund the whole thing. Well, we wouldn't do the water anyways,
Correct.
right?
Right, so the water department has about $470,000 in water surplus, and they have about $1.2 million in requests. So they'll have to do it in 3 different quote-unquote buckets. Part of it will have to be water surplus, part of it will have to be rates, and part of it will have to be debt. The water commissioners will make that decision, and then we'll, when we receive the articles from them, I'll know what they're looking to do.
But does that count towards 2.5 type stuff? Or?
No.
Okay.
The water rates are entirely separate.
Because it's still, that's kind
Yeah,
of.
they're self-funded.
You're gonna do free cash?
So the free cash, we have 1.5 million. So we can fund everything that's on that list, which is I think 1.1 off the top of my head. However, the last couple of years, we have not been able to add to stabilization. And last year, remember, we took money out of stabilization to fund all the raise increases in town. So I'd like to be able to put all of it back, or at least a portion of it. The other is that every year, the selectmen took a vote about 5 to 6 years ago to continuously fund sidewalks on an annual basis, and we pay for that out of free cash. So depending on how much we do in sidewalks, we normally do 150 to 200. And then depending on what we do to put money back into stabilization. And remember, since I have been here, I've always requested and the selectmen approved that we transfer $350,000 of free cash, because that comes off the school debt, which really is a give back to the town, because that's money that was collected the previous year. And instead of spending it, we lower a debt line to help everybody's taxes. So if you add those 3 up, we can't pay cash for everything on there.
How much do we owe the stabilization back from last year?
It was $458,000.
Wow.
So,
So you bond or deny is pretty much what you do.
Correct, so we could either borrow, the selectmen could choose to put less money back in,
Yeah.
and of course, you can also place it on the tax roll.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's almost all we have, just to fund those, right?
So, that's correct, so that's about $850,000 to $900,000, so that leaves us about $700,000, if that's the way that the selectmen ultimately want to handle it.
Yep.
And
Tough
you
decisions.
question on the septic system. We were talking about the dump. It's one person, right, that works out there, right? We're putting up a new building and a septic system, $500,000 septic
Actually,
system.
you have
What is-
one person that works for the town there, and sometimes you have two people that are volunteers.
But,
Sometimes.
yeah, I mean,
More often on the weekend, I believe, than during the week.
so, but the septic is basically servicing one person.
Right.
Bottom line is, if you gotta put a building there and you have to have an active septic, you have to have a septic system that complies, so.
You do? Oh, yeah, for the building, yeah.
So, it's-
Not a choice.
Huh?
It's not a choice.
Couldn't put like a shed from up on.
Come on up.
Huh?
You
Don't
could
be
do a
shy.
tank. You could do a tank
Yeah,
that has to be pumped once a month,
yeah,
but I don't think that would be advantageous to the town.
no.
It just seems like a lot of money. Might not be a choice, it just seems like a lot of money.
Hmm. So,
So more to come on that, right?
yeah.
On the capital budget.
Yeah.
Come on up. Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you?
Good.
You want the table, Mark, or?
Oh, no, I'm good right here.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you. We have some
Up to you.
additional slides, when they have some
Okay.
slides. So I'm just gonna pass around, this is goes number 22 and number 24.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Just like the class. Take one and pass it.
I think they,
Sorry. Grab one of those.
I think they missed that
Take-
memo.
I'll take the 24.
Yeah.
Thanks.
There you go.
It's like Thanksgiving at my house.
Exactly.
Take one. Okay, where are we starting?
All right, well, thank you for the opportunity, we appreciate it. I know you do have the, sorry, I'm sorry, fine.
No, thank you for having us tonight.
happens when you sit
My
down.
name is Bill Flynn, I'm the chairman of the school committee. Tonight we have our budget to present to you. We did it with the selectmen last week, we've been going through it. Mr. Bodwell and Mrs. Grant have put in a lot of work here doing this. And then our subcommittee of Mrs. Dragonetti and Mr. Yo have also put in an extreme amount of time on this. Also, we did begin this year with Mr. Gagne's assistance, put together a subcommittee with some of your people as well, hoping that, we could answer some questions up front, and try to get over the hurdle of answering the same questions year in and year out on the budget. So we're hoping that those sessions back in December and January really will help you guys understand this budget, which is difficult to understand. Hopefully, maybe put a few of the questions aside. But Mr. Bodwell is going to start, and Mrs. Dragonetti will also have some things to say. But at the end, we'll be more than happy to answer any and all questions that you may have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Flynn. Thank you again for the opportunity. We do appreciate it. There's a lot of information here. Just to start, we know we're part of the town, and we feel we're, like all our departments, we have our needs, and there are things that we want to try to explain to you and give you the perspective of where we're coming from to try to meet these needs within the district. We're a mission-driven district, and the mission of West Bridgewater Public Schools is to work together with home and the community to provide our students a safe environment which will acquire the skills, knowledge, and values needed for success in a diverse and global society of the 21st century. So that really drives everything that we do, to make sure we're doing the best we can for our kids and our staff and our community. When you look at building a budget, we look at our priorities, our district priorities and our school priorities. We look at our school improvement plans. We look at our NEASC recommendations. We take everything as what are the priorities we need within our district. I have goals, our administrators have goals, our educators have goals, so we try and drive all those goals towards the budget and what we need to do. We've always focused on social and emotional health of our students and our staff. It continues to be a priority, and it will into the future. And clearly, it's also the academic achievement of all within our district. We want them to excel. We want to prepare them for their future, whether it's going to college or off to a career. We want to make sure that they are prepared. When we look at building the budget, last couple of years, I felt that our budgets have been essential, things that we've needed within the budget that we've gotten. Through the town support and through our ESSER funds and other grants and opportunities. I feel in many ways, though, it's been a bit reactive as well to the changing needs within the district. I think looking forward, FY24 and beyond, we want to start to build a more proactive budget that is strategic in when we build it to continue to add in those needs that we have to move ourselves forward. So we felt we've done some catching up, which is great, but we want to continue to move ahead, and that's our goal.
So now I'm going to give you some information on PPE, which is per pupil expenditure. We did add some slides on PPE, which we'll talk about a little bit later in the presentation. But to basically sum it up, per pupil expenditure is how much a district spends per student. And I want to put some perspective on this. Rather than thinking about the spending, I want you to think about what that number translates to in terms of resources. So it's easy to look at just a dollar amount, but it's really important to think about when we are looking at this metric that is used by DESE to compare what each district is spending. We're really looking at how it translates to resources that are available to our students. So when we look at how West Bridgewater compares, I'm going to kind of go through the slides as we talk about Massachusetts, and we'll kind of zoom in towards West Bridgewater like the layers of an onion. So West Bridgewater compared to Massachusetts, of the 404 districts, in fiscal year 19 we were 23rd from the bottom. And in fiscal year 20, we actually dropped down to 8 from the bottom. So I should say, and I'm kind of backtracking a little bit, this was on the previous slide, that the PPE is calculated using all of the district's spending divided by the enrollment. And yes, this does include school choice students, which we will talk about in a future slide. So again, in fiscal year 20, we dropped down to 8 from the bottom. And if we look at that in terms of resources available to our students, it's not a great place to be. So when we zoom in a little bit closer and we look at South Shore, Massachusetts, you can see for fiscal year 19, well actually this is fiscal year 20 on here, but for fiscal year 19, we were 5th from the bottom with only a few districts lower than we are in terms of resources available. And then in fiscal year 20, we dropped to 4th from the bottom. If we zoom in even closer and we look at just the surrounding districts around us, I know we like to talk about comparing us to the Bridgewaters, which is a fair comparison, but we also know that the Bridgewaters are a little bit larger than we are. Brockton, of course, is massive and receives a huge amount of funding from the state. And Easton is a bit smaller and maybe a little bit more community-based, but they also have much higher spending compared to where we are. And if you look at this line graph, you can see kind of how we keep up from fiscal year 15 to fiscal year 18, and then it starts to decline in fiscal year 19 and 20. So our next slide compares the resources, and this is what PPE translates to. And what you can see here, we have 3 other districts that we're comparing. The one that I always like to talk about is Millis, because Millis is identified as a comparison district by DESE. So demographic is similar, town population is similar, and so when you look at what Millis is spending compared to what we are spending, it is quite higher. But you can also see on those rows below where that translates in terms of the resources available. And you can really see that, at the bottom it talks about professional development and equipment and technology, but across the board we're really talking about people. These are positions, and many of them are special education positions, related service providers, that again we'll talk about a little bit more in a moment. But it translates to those services that we are able to provide for our students.
And one of the things to point out is we continue to look to DESE to see if they've updated their numbers, and they haven't. So we don't have the FY21 numbers yet. It's last updated as of October 28th of 21. So we're waiting for some more information to get more relevant. That's why we only went back to FY20. We want to look at some of the solutions, ways we can address the needs we have with our budget. So in this budget, we have added in additional staffing that had been previously supported through our ESSER funding. So within the budget for this year, we have in 1 special ed teacher, 2 behavior techs, and 2.5 one-on-one instructional assistants that work specifically with a child. But we have other additional staff that we will continue to discuss and need through ESSER or other grants, mental health professionals, more special ed related services. Our EL population continues to boom, and IAs and behavior tech. So that's one prong of the solution. One of the other things that we're looking at for our budget is our funding for our teachers. They have contractual COLA raises that we're estimating in, along with step and track raises. We'll talk about the money. And then our special education out of district placement. Every year it's a very variable number for us, not only the placements, but the transportation itself is really an unknown, and it could change in a moment's time. It could go up or it could go down. We've been hopefully as fiscally responsible as we can this year, with only an increase of just over $85,000. In FY21 we had an increase in there of $266,000, and last year's $182,500. So we've dropped that amount. Again, trying to be very cautious that that number could change tomorrow. And the next slide just shows you the additional staffing and the funding source for each of them. So at the top, you'll see the FY23 town budget. Those are the positions that I just mentioned that we're looking to add in. What this is doing is hopefully avoiding that financial cliff that will come when the ESSER funds run out. I had a very similar statement last year that we have needs and they're not in the budget. We've had to put these in, and we have additional needs. Again, these are needs that build capacity within our district. Building capacity means that we're educating our kids in the least restrictive environment within our schools, rather than looking for much more expensive out-of-district play space.
Sorry, can I?
Sure.
This is the number, this is the people that you're adding this year?
In one form or fashion, yes. So the top part is we're asking within the budget, and I'll talk about a number associated with that. Our ESSER funds are funds that we continue to get through the federal government. So we are continuing to want to have a full-time English language teacher, a part-time special education teacher, and a part-time speech and language pathologist. We've had those employed this year. They'll be continued to pay through ESSER though for next year. We have a middle senior high school social worker. This year, fortunately, we got a grant, a special ed grant that we could pay for that. We hope to get the grant again. If we don't get the grant, we need the person because we had school psychologist resign. We filled that position with a social worker, and now we added another one. But again, we're saying that funding will come from our contributions rather than from the town. And then we've assumed the part-time certified OT assistant or a CODA within our own budget by movement of some staff. So you'll see the middle two areas are the ones that are supporting outside of the budget, where the top one is the one we're asking to add into the budget.
So these seem all, and I'm not as close to it as you are obviously, but these seem to be really like more specialists, right? So they're
Good.
not, we're not really building offerings like, I don't know, adding French where we didn't have it before, or things like that. This seems to be all real specialized for specifically targeting special education or IEPs or things like that?
Correct. Special education, mental health needs within the district. Those are the areas that we're missing. Those in the chart view before, that's where we showed that we don't have those extra layers of support for our students. We also don't have reading specialists. We have one reading specialist in the entire district. That's another layer of the academic support.
Yeah.
We're not looking for an additional social studies teacher or an additional math teacher. Our classroom sizes are pretty good across the district. It's more the specialized areas, mental health, EL, and special education are our main focus areas.
So we don't feel like we're not offering maybe some of the things that some of the schools surrounding us are that we're not able to offer. I don't know, IT or any kind of special, not
Additional
special, but
courses.
additional courses, I guess, that students are looking for that we're not able to offer.
I think
It's
at the middle senior high school level, we're offering a full complement of AP courses. We're offering robotics and challenging tech classes, computer science courses,
Okay.
TV production courses. So I do feel in the core areas that we're doing really well.
core areas, that's what I
So,
was trying to get to.
if we didn't add these positions, I mean, we don't have them now.
Some we do
Is
we're paying
everything
through
gonna
us.
go crazy if we don't?
So
Do you
actually,
feel
on the
these-
next two slides, I'm going to explain special education and English language learners for you all. Because basically what it boils down to, all of those elective courses that you're speaking of, if we don't have the funds to pay for our ELL students or our special education students, all of those courses will go away. We will be forced to spend that money on special education.
Why is
And
that?
I will explain to you why. So on the next slide is English language learners, and then following that is special education. So English language learners, you can see, looking at that trend line, has increased over time in our district. So these numbers are the end of year numbers. And this is great because what it means is that the diversity in our town is increasing, but every day we're having students move into our district. I shouldn't say every day, that's maybe a drastic exaggeration here, but we do have a good number of students who are needing to have their services met. Now, in terms of a free and appropriate public education, we are required by federal law to provide that to every student. And so when an ELL student moves into our district and they don't speak the language, we are required by federal law to provide English language support. And so that's just one of those positions that's on there. And one of the challenges with this position is because students move in across the district, we need a person that can travel across the district. It's not as simple as, oh, well, you know, Mrs. Smith teaches 2 sections here and then can pick up a section there. It's a very specialized position that has to be able to travel and balance that schedule. Now, English language learners, depending on their proficiency, require a certain number of service minutes. Now, once they become proficient, they become what's called a former English language learner, or FELD. Those students are not included on this bar chart because even though they're tracked in the system, we are not required to provide them direct services. So of course our number of dual language learners is much higher, but this bar chart reflects the number of students that actually require those services and require a specialized person to provide those services.
Is it all the same language? Or do you hire one
No.
person that speaks all the languages we
No,
need?
we have a multitude of different languages, Portuguese, Haitian Creole, we have Mandarin.
But I think that actually brings up another good point, that an ELL teacher is teaching in English, but they're teaching the nuances of English language. So if you were to move to a foreign country, the best way to learn the language is to be submersed in it and to have somebody alongside you to help you learn the language and learn the nuances of the language.
So that's what this person does. They're not speaking all these different languages. They're mostly
Correct.
teaching
Which,
And one of the things that, we're facing, almost every day is when the students come in, if they need to be tested for special education, they'll need to be tested using a specialized person who can speak the language to do the testing. So that's additional money that we just assume when they walk in the door that we've got to provide them with a translator or someone who can speak and test in Haitian Creole, for example.
and if we are providing documentation or communication with the family, it has to be provided in their native language. So then we are looking at translation services as well.
Mm-hmm.
And those are all requirements. Those are requirements that, we can't choose not to do it, so it has to be funded. On the next slide is a little pie chart of special education out of district. So for those of you who don't know me, I think most of you don't know me, we did meet in December and I talked a little bit about special education, but I work in special education. So every day I work in what's called a substantially separate classroom. It's a classroom for students who cannot be educated in what you would think of as a traditional classroom. Now, under federal law, we are required to provide a free, appropriate public education to every single student that lives in West Bridgewater between the ages of 3 and 22.
Now, is that clearly defined what that is, or do we interpret
I think it's
that?
open to interpretation, what a free and appropriate public education is, not like a checklist that you go down or.
So actually, no, there's a very clearly defined special education process. We, when we're looking at whether or not a student is eligible for special education, we have to go through the flow chart. We have to include a certain number of team members. We have to do a thorough, comprehensive assessment. And I will tell you that at the end of that flow chart, when we go through the eligibility process, we are required by federal law to say to the parent, are you satisfied with the district's evaluation? And if they say no, then we have to pay for another outside evaluation. And so it's really important to understand that special education is very well protected under IDEA. And so in a lot of ways our hands are tied. So one of the things that Mr. Bodwell has spoken about is building that capacity within district. Because if a student is, turns 3 and is now at the beginning end of that 3 to 22, or they move in from another district, we have to assume those costs. And so if we can't educate them in the classroom, then what happens is, or if we can't educate them in our school building, then what ends up happening is we pay for an out-of-district placement. And again, we're required by federal law to pay for that. And so
Could I
it's...
ask a question?
Yeah.
What's the regulatory agency that tracks what we do within the school? I mean, I know that I serve on a board for adults with disabilities.
Yep.
So I know there's CARF and there's Quest and there's all these other, who make sure that we do the right thing.
Well, in Massachusetts, DESI tracks. We have coordinated program reviews to make sure that we're providing that free and appropriate public education to students.
The Bureau of Special Education.
Bureau of Special Education.
Also, so
yeah.
people can appeal to that if they feel that their rights have been violated. They can
People
file
come
appeal.
in and examine the school to see what's going on.
Records.
What
Yeah,
have
they
we
would-
been doing up till now, though?
We continue, this is an ongoing process in terms of if someone
Yeah.
files a complaint against a BSEA, that could be for a special education, it could be for a 504 plan, that we've got to then provide documentation and information as to what we've done along in the process. So this has always been ongoing, and this is in every district in
I was gonna say, everybody struggles with the same thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And so you can see on the special education, that section of the budget is probably the most frustrating because it's the largest, and it's the most variable, and it's just a very small subset of our population, of our students, but it takes up the most of the budget. And then of course we have to pay for transportation as well. We're required, again, by federal law to transport the student from door to door. And so if that specialized program is in, say, Fall River, we have to provide transportation to get to that specialized program. If that's the program that is determined to be the best program for the student.
But you do have some options, right? Like in terms of choosing the right program, and it's not a cookie cutter, like defined.
It's
You
never
know.
a cookie cutter.
No.
Right.
It's a team process,
Yeah.
Right.
and that's led by the Director of Student Services. They'll take parents and students on tours of different tours. Again, looking for the least restrictive environment, which is the environment closest to home, and the one that makes the best sense for the needs of that individual student. So it's not just they decide they want to go to program X. We'll look at all options. We'll look at the collaboratives first before we look at private placements. We'll look at
Right.
closer ones, so that cuts down on transportation. And as I said earlier, we've worked hard to decrease what we're asking for
Mhm.
out of special ed over the last couple of years.
So you can see when you look at the different types of programming towards the bottom of this slide, some of the more affordable options are public school programs. So East Bridgewater has a special education program that we can send our students to. But that program does not meet the needs of, and to your point, it's definitely not cookie cutter at all. Students, whether they are special education or regular education, have a variety of learning needs. And so if even that program is not substantial enough to meet their needs, then that's when we look at collaborative schools. And then even then, sometimes a collaborative school is not going to fit their needs because of the nature of their disability, depending on how severe or profound it is. And so then the price tag, of course, goes up even higher because the ratio of staffing needed to educate this student is much higher. And so that's when you're looking at a non-public private school. Sometimes these schools are residential schools because they have to live away from home given the nature of their disability. And I will say, Mr. Bodwell spoke about that process of looking for a school. Very frequently, the family will tour and the district will tour and say, this is a great fit for this student. They'll apply and they will not be chosen. That's because they all have their own process behind the scenes, and they might say, well, this student is not going to fit in our program. And we're not going to be able to make it work because we don't have the resources. And so then back to the drawing board.
We're never going to be able to meet the needs of every student
Of course not.
within.
No, that's why we
Our
have,
own school.
we have 16 out-of-district placements now, and I think
16.
that's the reality of it, and it's down one from last year, but that doesn't mean the needs of other students have changed. There's certainly needs change, so although we may be -1 for this year, we might have had 3 come back and 2 others go out and so forth. And again, building the capacity within the school in terms of special education, mental health, and our EL population really helps us save money in the long run when we add learning centers at different schools so we can keep kids in. It's much different than adding an extra English teacher to the middle, senior, high school, which may reduce class size, but it won't affect keeping kids in district.
So most of what you're going to be able to bring in-house though is more going to be in the maybe East Bridgewater, potentially maybe the collaborative space, it's never gonna be these out of district
We have students in those placements
365,000,
now.
right?
We have students in those placements now.
No, what I'm saying is building the capacity within our school, you're never gonna probably be able to meet the needs of a child that's in this bucket.
More than likely not, because most of those are residential.
Right, right.
And do you feel, going forward, I understand the needs of special ed, but we still have to keep our eye on the other students that are looking for top-notch education.
Of course.
Additional courses, like I see them in Duxbury and Hingham, they offer courses that are unbelievable over there. But we can't swoop it all down to
Well,
one special group and ignore everyone
but
else.
of course not. But that again is where our hands are tied, because under federal law we are legally required to provide special education. We are not legally required to provide all of the, the wide variety of courses. And so if we don't have the funding, we have to make it work.
I see the new people that
Yeah.
you need, and I'm thinking, what have we been doing up till now? If we haven't been meeting the law then, is that what you're saying, or?
Well,
No, we've been meeting the
yeah.
law. It depends. We have people move in. We have children start school that have specific needs. So we've just needed to build in-house capacity to address the needs of students that haven't had to go out yet. And that's really.
I mean, that makes sense if we have
So-
in-house capacity and don't have to send people
Yeah.
out.
Right.
We're gonna save money. It'd be nice to see what that might be.
So I think
But-
so. I'm a related service provider. I'm a speech pathologist, and Mark's going to speak in a moment about the school psychologist position. But what happened? So I left a district. I recently changed districts within like the last 3 or 4 years, and I recently changed districts because my caseload at the previous district that I was at was so high that I was not feeling a variety of things. I was not feeling that I was doing what's right for the student. I was not feeling that I was meeting my ethical code, because related service providers do have ethical codes. We're actually healthcare providers working in a school system. And so I had to leave because that caseload was too high. On paper, were the students getting what they needed? Yes. But I knew that they weren't getting what they needed because I was not helping them to a degree that they were meeting their potential and growing with the curriculum.
And that's part of the reason why we've added the SLP and a speech and language pathologist, a part-time person. But in the middle senior high school, we had one school psychologist who worked with about 650 students. Besides seeing students individually for counseling and groups, she was also the only person who would do the psychological testing within senior high school, which occupies a tremendous amount of time to test, write the reports, and then deliver the information. So when she made the decision to leave, and again, it was a lot had to do with just having so much on her caseload that we've got to hire the social worker plus an additional one using the grant. So there's the funding was there, and again, the additional person really has helped out. And to address the issues of regular ed kids and our students in the classroom, I do want to say I would put our program of studies up against anyone's if you have a chance to look at it. It's available online. We've got some great classes. Like I said, I believe we offer 11 advanced placement courses, to computer courses, to robotics, to television production, robotic classes, and lots of great forensics courses too.
So you feel okay with
I
that?
do feel very good. I think they continue to do an outstanding job along with everyone else.
Good.
So if you lost a psychologist, who's doing all that testing? Because the
That's a great
social
question.
worker can't do it, right?
Correct.
You
So
have to
we've
be a
either-
psychologist.
Yep, we've either had to use the other 2 school psychologists we have in the district.
Oh, so we have 2 others.
We have 2
Okay.
others, one at the Roselle, one at the Howard. Or we've had to contract out, and we budget money towards that every year through a collaborative. We have someone we pay per test to come in. So that's another concern because that's also a team chair, and that's something that's also into our ESSER. So it's, again, we've seen great results in the social workers. They serve as a social worker / adjustment counselor, and it's been very helpful.
That was a question I wanted to ask. If you wanted to hire someone on a contract basis to do the work, the town wouldn't be carrying the budget of healthcare and bonuses and all that stuff. So the net benefit could be that we get someone, maybe pay a little bit more hourly for that person to do the work, but we don't have all the benefits and the healthcare and all the other stuff that is a cost to the town. I don't know, have you looked at that, or is it a
Well, that's what we
possibility?
continue to do. That's why we budget money towards that every year. just because we would have testing needs that go beyond what our school psychologists could do at the middle, senior high school. So we book certain slots every year. I forget exactly, it's 10 to 15 slots. So we may have to increase that, but then it gets to that point, you're paying a lot of money and you don't have someone in the building.
Yeah,
so.
but you don't see, the town is paying the healthcare cost, you don't see that in your budget, so.
But traditionally, in all the experience that I've had, it is absolutely more expensive to outsource help like that.
Okay, well,
And we
that's
have a
a question I
number of
needed to
people
ask.
that don't take health insurance from us, so I would bet 9 out of 10 times that it is significantly less expensive in the long run to hire in-house.
I was just thinking, since
Yeah.
the ebb and flow of the number of students is gonna change, I mean, you could have a dramatic change and absolutely need to contract people out, so.
It does vary,
Yeah.
when the testing comes up. We don't know how many tests we'll have each year, so it's a very variable number.
Right.
Could you tell me what a behavior technician is?
Yes.
Please.
Behavior tech is going to work with students who are very at risk in terms of their behaviors, so they are specialized in dealing with students who have some of our more difficult behaviors within the classroom, and they're also working with the individual teachers. They're a tremendous asset to us keeping kids.
We don't have any now.
We do.
We
We
do.
do. We need to add. We need to add. Due to the needs of our kids.
See, I'm seeing this trend going like that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So wait.
Yeah.
Good point.
And not that this
Yeah.
is the forum
You are absolutely right.
for dealing with it, but
Because we,
Yeah.
it's huge.
right.
Yeah.
And I will tell you, the cost of one behavior tech that can work and keep a student in-house, and then you look at that student who has to even go for a 45-day placement
Oh,
where
yeah.
they're evaluated,
Oh, yeah,
is
sure.
tens of thousands of dollars plus the transportation.
Right.
And that's only for 45 days. So you're absolutely right. We see that trend and we acknowledge that trend. It's meeting the needs of our kids, which are ever changing.
And just to build on Cheryl's point, the town, when they do the per pupil expenditure, when the state does that, there are expenses that the town pays on behalf of the school, I guess you'd say, like outside of the school budget. Do other towns do that same thing, or, I mean, how do you know
Yeah.
it's apples to apples
So
in terms
it all
of what's
comes,
included?
from the DESI website, so the formula is the same for all districts. And I think actually when we met in, was it December? I think we did a little math that it was, that all of that the town pays is included
Is
in the
included,
in the
okay.
PPE.
I was
Yep.
trying to remember that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
The next slide is a pie chart that shows the FY23 overall budget, and it divides it out by the town contributions, school contributions, and the Chapter 70. So you'll see that our Chapter 70 proposed amount for this year is just over 5.3 million. And that leaves the taxpayer contribution of almost 10 million for a total proposed budget that we're asking for $15,258,937. Within that, or in excess of that actually, are school contributions, and I'll go a little bit deeper into that in a second. But we have school contributions about 2.4 million of money that we're putting into the school district into the budget. So the overall budget we're looking for is, 17,700,000, but the money that's been put in. So that does represent an increase of $784,667, or 5.42% from FY22.
So the Chapter 70, I think that the state's kicking that up this,
They did,
Right.
yeah. The proposed increase is about 744,000, I
for
believe.
this town alone?
For this town alone, which is a tremendous increase when you look at our school
Yeah, that's big.
population. In general, they went up 485 million, I believe, for the state. And that's gonna continue, they believe, over the next 4 more years. That numbers should continue to increase. But some districts receive the state minimum, which is $30 per student, which, leaves you at a, you're not getting as much Chapter 70. We got about $700, or $700 per student. So they've recognized a definite need. The next page just talks about some of the summary of increases, so you can see what those different increases are. And there's really emphasis on 3 primary areas: our additional staffing, which I've mentioned before, which is the 1 special ed teacher, the 2 behavior techs, and the 2.5 instructional assistants. That equals $175,000, which is a 1.2% part of our increase. The teaching services are estimated at $422,000. That's the estimated COLA, plus their STEP, which is what they go down each year, and their track if they move over to the right in terms of the education, which is 2.9%. And then, as I mentioned, the $85,000, which is our special education increase. So that, along with our Norfolk Aggie, which we have 2 more students applying this year, and that's 55,000.
2 more applying or 2 more accepted?
Well, 2 more, I believe they've been accepted, we believe they'll be accepted, and they're planning on going. Hopefully.
Because one thing that struck me was the Southeast Region was just here, and they said their enrollment from West Bridgewater is going from 48 to 64 students, and I wonder if you can speak to that. That seems like a lot of students electing
They run
to
a good
go.
program. They run a program that meets their needs, and we have a tremendous amount of students who are applying to go. There are limited spaces there. I don't know how many they will in fact take. What they do take, we try to backfill with our school choice students.
Yeah,
So we
I'm
keep
just
it-
wondering what are they just really looking for that specialized, mechanic or
Mhm.
hairdressing or whatever it is that they're looking for?
They're able to now.
Yeah.
They're able to because the programs are so sought after. These kids are, you get kids now that are a little bit more advanced than we were when we were kids, that are understanding that coming out of college with $200,000 worth
Yeah.
of loans is, if I can get myself a trade and come out of high school and start working in the trade and making some money,
Yeah.
and I mean, I think we had over I think there was 22 kids accepted last week over to
Yeah, there's a
Southeast.
number accepted.
And I believe there was probably another 22 or something that were either deferred or put off just now, that we have a number of kids that are trying to get in, which is, so is it the rest of the towns around us trying to get in, and they only have so few spots over there.
Yeah.
But it's become a really tough place to get into.
Mhm.
And it is harder for the kids. The kids, behavior now comes into it. They're really watching.
He mentioned that.
Yeah.
Discipline
No, it is.
was one of their criteria.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
It really is.
And it's a small detail, but our net increase of $45,000, if we did not have students going to Norfolk, additional students, it'd be a net negative of about $10,000 in terms of all the other things within our budget, contracts and supplies and so forth. It's a very small number in our overall budget.
So the 2.9 is essentially contractual obligations
Correct.
through the.
Correct. So the next page just looks, we've done this slide, I know, in the past, and just the larger pie chart just looks at the kind of the overall town history of funding, which will stay pretty stagnant or consistent at town contribution being about 60%, chapter 70 about 25%, and then the school contributions at 15%. On the next slide, I talk about those school contributions. Over the last couple of years, though, we've seen a big increase in our chapter 70. Last year, I believe the increase was 412,000, so now we're an additional 744 on top of that. So you'll notice that the good news is the state's giving us more money to the town, and we know it goes to the town, but we've seen go from 25.8% to 27.2% for chapter 70, up to 30%. Of the overall budget, which has, in essence, helped the town because they've been able to drop their contribution amount. So that's the reality of that over the last 3 years.
I get stuck on that one a little bit because
Yeah.
there's been steady increases of what the town has paid, and I just can't swallow that slide well.
Yeah.
Okay.
I get it. I get what you're saying. But there's been a steady increase in the town's expenditures.
And we're not saying the town's not supporting the budget. What we're saying is that chapter 70 has gone up. They've given, this year 744,000 more to the town, which helps with increases. Last year it was 412,000 more, so.
Well, and I think on the following slides really kind of explain that a little bit more. So on the next slide is really kind of a breakdown of how Chapter 70 is calculated. Chapter 70 is extremely complicated. It's a very complex formula. But basically what it boils down to is the Commonwealth identifies how much money they need to send based on the number of ELL students that we have, the number of special education students, guidance and psychological services, and what are considered high need students or low income students. And so what they do is they look at our students and where they fall in these high needs areas, and then send more money based on the number of students that we have. And so on this slide, you can see it's compares two different districts that it's in the Chapter 70 funding explained information piece that you can find in the resources here. But basically, that light blue and the orange are what's considered the foundation budget. So what the state does is they look at those high needs areas and they say, okay, these are the students that you have. This is the money we're going to send for those students.
When you say high needs, are you talking about special ed, or are you
So
talking
high
about
needs
low income?
means special education, low income, and ELL. That's what's considered a high needs student. Okay, so they look at that, and then of course they look at the town demographic, and they say, okay, this is how much we think that you can pay, and so we are going to send you Chapter 70 to make up the difference in that foundation budget. Now, what the foundation budget is, though, is it's what's considered an equitable minimum. So they are considering that this is adequate spending to meet the bare minimum for the students that you have.
So are you saying 11,000 or 14,000 is the minimum?
Oh, so if you're looking at this slide, it's about 11,000. Yes. So it's but that's for
If you're in Lynn.
If you're in Lynn, right?
If you're in Newton, it's 9,000.
Right. It's going to be based on the needs of your students. So that foundation budget, I know it's complex, but that foundation budget looks at your high need students. So if you're looking at students who require special education, they are going to require more money to pay for the services that we spoke about earlier. If you have more English language learners, that's going to cost more money. They come with a higher price tag because we are required to give those services. And if you have more low-income students, again, there's more of a cost associated with that as well.
What does that cost with low income? How does that?
So why does it cost more for a low-income student?
They come into school and they're educated, and the income doesn't really play a role, right?
Well, so there's a couple of things, and Mr. Bottle can speak a little bit about things that happen in the school. But if you look at the correlation of socioeconomic status and education, you'll see that students that come from a lower socioeconomic status, it correlates directly to higher level of special education. So some of these students are kind of, they fall in multiple areas. So they're low income, but they're also ELL, and they are also special education. There's a higher price tag associated with the resources that they need. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know that I
So
necessarily
complicated, yeah.
understand so, I come from a really large family and didn't make a lot, my parents didn't make a lot of money, so I'm just thinking that didn't mean I needed additional services at school, and
And that's just
struggle with that a
that's
little
the
bit.
formula that they use, and and again, that's applied across the Commonwealth for all. So you're right. I mean, it doesn't mean someone who may have an income status that's lower than us doesn't mean they're not as good a student.
Right,
It's a factor that they
Yes.
use when creating this.
Well, it's a factor that's based in research too. I mean, if you look at, and I don't have the research in front of me, I'm happy to go find some for you.
It's
but-
statistics
I-
and
Yeah,
averages.
it's statistics.
agree.
Yeah, exactly,
Yeah, I
right? So,
agree.
so they calculate that foundation budget based on your students, based on what they have determined the town can, or based on your students basically. Then they calculate what your town can pay, and they backfill that with Chapter 70 funding to provide that minimum education.
So they don't say though, every child in the state of Massachusetts, you have to spend at least 10 grand on their education or whatever per pupil, right? It varies by town, is what you're saying?
Exactly. It's exactly that. So municipalities can choose to contribute more based on those local identified areas of need. You know, we strive to be a high achieving district. We strive to provide all of that variety of courses, which really, when we look at that extra local contribution, which is that teal bar, those electives and that variety of coursework, that's that extra spending, because the state's identified that we need to be spending that foundation budget. So on the next slide, you can see, this is kind of how West Bridgewater has changed over time. Again, you can see
I'm
that.
sorry though, so this is Newton and Lynn, what's West Bridgewater's, like 11,000, what's West Bridgewater's?
So if you look on the next,
Okay, this one here?
yep,
Okay.
yep. And I did not break it down by per pupil expenditure because I just didn't have that information available to me, and I was too afraid to do the math on that. So what we did is we looked at the total budget, and we looked at the portions of the budget in terms of that required local contribution. You can see the light blue bar is what the state has identified that West Bridgewater is required to contribute.
But you don't have
each
that
year.
per pupil?
We don't have it per pupil, no.
Right, yeah, we can get it.
I mean, yeah, we can figure it
Yeah.
out, but.
Okay.
And then the Chapter 70 aid, you can see, has increased over time because, again, the needs of our town have changed. You can see that maroon slice is the school contribution, so much of that is school choice that we'll speak about in a moment. And then that extra local, that teal piece on the top, you can see has slightly decreased over time, which is very hard to swallow. I agree with you, Mr. Ryan, that we have continued to fund, we have continued to increase. But if we want to provide the same education that we have been, and we want to grow, the state's showing us that our foundation budget is increasing, and therefore, if we want to continue to provide the level of education that we've historically provided, we need to grow that extra local contribution as well. Mr. Bodwell spoke mostly about this and the increases that we saw this year. Again, the foundation rates for English language learners, special education, and low income, as well as guidance and psychological services, have increased. But also, the overall state budget has proposed an increase of that $485 million to account some for inflation as well. The cost of everything is going up, and so is the cost of education. So you can see that we are receiving the largest increase in 10 years, and it's an increase of $744,000 for fiscal year 23.
So the next one just talks a little bit more to school contributions, and you'll see in that blue pie chart that a majority of our school contributions are through school choice. So we have budgeted the $1.5 million through school choice, and then as you work around the circuit breaker is funding that the districts receive for any special education costs over and above $45,000.
Isn't that state funded though?
That is state funded. Yep. So it comes into
When you
school.
call it a school contribution.
Yep, because we don't ask the town for it.
Oh, I
Yeah,
see. Okay.
That's where those all come from. So that money comes in, we have to estimate that because we don't know at this point, but we look at previous years to see what that might be.
Mhm.
Our revolving accounts, our athletics, our preschool, our surround care programs, so that's money we take in and we go back out and pay some of our staff and programs with. And then we have some other special education grants that make up the remaining part of the school contribution, again, separate from what we're asking the town
And there's no, but ESSER funds aren't on this.
for. Correct, yeah. We'll talk about those near the end.
Okay.
And then when you look at our enrollment in West Bridgewater through school choice, you'll see that we're pretty consistent in terms of our numbers of students within the community. And again, it's the people wanting to come to West Bridgewater is strong. The numbers, we average about 140 applicants. We continue to get calls every day. So we are looking at 23 seniors this year. So it's our goal to maintain our number at about the same. Usually our highest numbers of students we add in are grade 7 and grade 9. Our 9th graders who leave for a private school or the vocational schools. And 7 is because they go from 4 sections in Howard School to 5 sections in the middle senior high school.
So what's the overall students for all, since the 17, like the same time period? Do you have has it stayed pretty flat
The total?
overall?
We're about
Total?
1,400. I mean, we range from 1,350 to 1,400. I think right now we're at 1,388, I think, is our number in our last census data. So we're right around the 1,400. And that's stayed pretty consistent over the years.
Yeah. So when you talk about the school choice though, and how it's, gone from 238 to 285 with the building that's going on in the town, this is where I'm wondering if we should be backfilling as
Yep.
many of those spots, because I'm concerned about that, at some point we won't be able to do
I
that.
agree. We're equally concerned. We're gonna look really closely at our elementary grades this year. We have plenty of applicants, but we're gonna be very cautious about adding anyone into the elementary school, just due to the fact we don't know what we may get.
You have a large kindergarten class this year, right?
We have
You
a-
said that earlier.
We have a fifth kindergarten class this year.
So you're gonna have a lot of kids coming in at the lowest level and not be able to add early on, right?
We're not gonna go obviously about 5 sections, 5 classes per grade. We have a large first grade class, we have a bubble in 3rd grade, and a bubble in 4th grade, I think it is right now. So we have some
Okay, so
bubbles
those-
that we know we're not gonna add. So at the high school, it's somewhat easier to add because they don't travel in
Yeah.
those packs. They're in, certain, selected courses.
Mhm.
So there's more ability to add there. But again, we're gonna be very cautious with the building that's going on.
And how do we decide which students to accept? I know that Southeast Regional, they had like sort of 3 buckets. They focused on grades and behavior and discipline.
We
How
have
do
we have
we
no
decide?
ability to select students.
For school choice?
For school choice, yeah. All districts are open to school choice.
Do
and
you
if-
just like
It's a
pick
blind
them out of a
draw.
It's
hat?
a blind draw.
Blind draw.
Literally
Yep.
pick them out of a hat?
If we have 10
You don't know any
spots and we have
grades,
10
nothing?
openings, then all 10 get in. If we have 12 people are interested, then we'll do a lottery to get in.
Lottery,
I
okay.
will say that we've had great kids come in, people who choose to come to West Bridgewater. So we've been very fortunate in the students who have come into the town. But yes, we do not have choice, and also students who come in if they have special needs, that is funded by the sending district. So
Yeah.
we take care of them programmatically, but they're fiscally
How do you
responsible.
figure all that out?
Well,
If the student needs special needs help, how many dollars do you figure?
That's a formula that we do, we get reimbursed through the state. The Chapter
So-
70 and partly through the school choice program. So
But you
they'll
can
look at
measure,
it.
you can measure that?
We can measure it by what's on their IEP, so what services they have. So we will have to record carefully all students with special needs
Yeah,
who
yeah.
come in and are school choice, and then that goes back to the state and they'll reimburse.
That sort of answered my next question, which was gonna be, what if we eliminated school choice?
Okay.
$1.5
That's
million
coming.
gone.
Yep.
Would we gain anywhere else? Probably not, based on
It's a
what you're saying.
it's a good question, and it's a logical question to ask. We do address it in the next slide.
Yeah,
but
the
it's-
one that we added.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is number 22.
Yeah.
Looks like this.
Yep, so you can see, filling available seats with school choice students does deflate the PPE. So if we could simply calculate PPE based on removing the choice students and removing the funding from the calculation, so we change the numerator and the denominator, then our PPE would increase to about $15,587. Now, there's 2 problems here. The first is this new figure would still place West Bridgewater in the bottom 25% and about $2,000 below the state average. So you can see on this bar chart here, these are all districts that we looked into that accept school choice students. Norton is about 7% of their pupils, Mashpee is about 8%, Millis is at 8%, Old Rochester is at 10%, and then West Bridgewater, here we are at 19%, and then Avon actually accepts more than we do at 22%. And you can see these are the per pupil expenditures of each of those districts, and they do have the school choice students as well. So that light maroon that we've kind of filled in there, that's what would happen with our PPE if we were able to eliminate the 19%. Now, we can't eliminate the 19% because these students are our students until they graduate.
Right.
But it's important to remember that if Norton eliminated their 7%, if Avon eliminated their 22%, their bars would go up as well. The only bar here that wouldn't change, of course, is the state average because that does not include school choice students. It's just a state average. The bigger problem is that removing school choice from the equation also creates a $1.5 million budget deficit. And there are so many fixed operating costs, that if we were to go through and try to weed out the things that, you know, I think Kathy gave the example of Chromebooks. Okay, we would need a Chromebook for all of those students, but we still would need all of the classes. So our class size would decrease. But it's like, again, Kathy had a great comparison. If you're driving to Braintree every day and there's 3 seats open in your car, the cost of your gas doesn't change, the maintenance on your vehicle doesn't change.
Economy of
You're
scale.
just filling up,
Yeah.
you're just
But-
filling in the seats.
Honestly, I get it. Honest, I get it. And I really don't have a problem with school choice, honest. But when you have 285 students, you can't tell me that you pulled 285 students out of the school and it not have an impact on staff.
Right.
That just
It
seems
doesn't.
like such a, like conceptually, right? And I'm not doing it empirically, but conceptually, like, it just, if you pull that much out,
You
When you
wouldn't need
start
as
to
much
pull them out,
staff.
for example, if we had a 4th grade class that had 75, we'd still would have 4 classrooms, but we could add 10 there, we still have the 4 classrooms, and we wouldn't really change the operating costs, except a few Chromebooks, maybe some books if we're, or online subscriptions. Standing at the middle senior high school, because I lived when we didn't have school choice, and I was in the middle senior high school, and we had graduating classes in the 50s, maybe in the 60s. When we added school choice, now it did take some time, we didn't add all these kids in at once, but there really wasn't an increase in staff needed, because we were running really small classes at the middle senior high school. Same thing at the 7th and 8th grade level, they were small, we still had the same amount of sections, but at the high school level, we were running, you know, very often running classes of 10 to 12 students. And now the thought was always, and it's a reality, to be 18 to 20. Some are of course over that, and some are still under that. So, yeah, I mean, are there a few teachers here and there? Absolutely, there probably would be a few teachers here and there, but a majority of the cost would be about the same.
Would the capacity of the teachers to help the children without the extra professionals, though, would that increase?
If your class size was significantly
Yeah.
smaller, would it be beneficial? I think in some ways. I will also tell you that when, you know, classes become too small, I think it limits the conversations that go on.
Definitely.
So I think you could probably
Yeah.
argue it both ways.
Pluses and minuses,
Yeah.
right?
I guess my only other point on the PPE, whether it's the 15.5 or the 13, we'll call it low, right? In a business world, you're considered very successful when you can manage and control your costs. In a school, you're saying the opposite. And I would challenge you, I would love empirical data. I would love to, and I mean, I went through the DESI site, right? And the dropout rate's almost non-existent. That's fantastic.
In West Bridgewater.
In West
right,
Bridgewater.
yeah.
I had a lot of fun on that site last night. Thank you all very much.
There's a lot of stuff.
And I still left with as many questions probably as I had. But I mean, I just, you know, so like some sort of measure, because the dollar doesn't, I'm sorry, the dollar, not that, I mean, if it was 10, oh, it's, you know, but we're somewhere in there. Maybe we're in the lower part, but we're somewhere in there. So like, what are your metrics? What do you define success as? Are we there? Are we not there? Like, how, like.
Yeah, graduation
we're
rates,
numbers.
MCAS scores, you know.
We're all
I am
numbers
gonna
people.
let Mark answer this, but I do want to say, being the newest member of the team here, to your point about a business model, when you keep costs down, you should be applauded for that. As the newest member of the team, I'm going to applaud all of them for that, because they have not asked for this money, and now I hold so much weight in the ask because they haven't asked until now, and they're saying, this is it's time. It's something that we really need now.
But when you say they haven't asked, this budget has gone up. Was it over 5% every year for the last 4 or 5 years, right? If I remember right?
It's an
It's our
Yeah, in
highest.
that range?
45.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
I mean, you know, so it's
Yeah,
not
I-
like
I-
we've decreased the
Well,
funding, right?
No, and it's been representative with the increase in the Chapter 70 as well. You know, what are some of our measures? I mean, you're right, dropout rate is really low, our graduation rate is really high. Our 10th grade MCAS scores are good. Every kid has graduated for the past 20 years, no student has never not graduated.
Acceptance to college?
Acceptance to college
Great.
is strong. Again, it's strong, and we know that may not be the path for everyone. So that's I
Right.
take some caution in saying
Right.
we will need everyone to go to a 4-year college, because that's not the reality
Right,
anymore,
right.
and that's okay.
But that's all right.
Right. Do I think we can improve some of our MCAS scores at the lower grade level? I do. I think we can improve some of our AP scores. I do. Do we do well? Yes. I think do we meet the social and emotional needs of all of our kids? I hope, but I think that there's some lacking there. Do we meet the special education needs and EL needs of all of our kids right now? I'd venture to say we do the minimum. We can do better for our kids. Do we provide them a nurturing, caring, and learning environment? Absolutely. We've got great teachers, we've got great kids, and we've got a great community that supports everyone. I think there's just some things we can continue to do a little bit better, and that's our goal. Our goal is to be strategic and to be proactive and look at things to make sure they're really ready for college and career. And maybe even that career piece. And are they good thinkers? Are they good? Do they collaborate? Do they work well together? Do we give them all the needs that they desire?
Yeah, I guess the strategic piece is what I struggle a little bit with the school choice thing. Are we being strategic in our approach to?
Well, I don't think we have much of a choice. I'll be honest with you right now. And this goes back to the previous superintendent who said this as well. That we're relying on the school choice numbers. And I think we knew that nearly 20 years ago that this day may come when we get more growth in the town. The reality is we have room in our schools, but unfortunately they wouldn't be filled with students from another district. They're West Bridgewater students. The downside is that there's a funding deficit that goes along with that.
Yeah.
So I think we've been strategic. We've used this surplus of money to help and to balance out our budgets. But I think we have to continue to look at it.
Just my only other concern with school choice is if 40 houses open on Scotland Street at the end of this year, and we're at capacity.
We have some.
But doesn't our tax revenue go up as a
Oh,
town as
no,
well?
I'm saying classroom
Not enough.
capacity.
Yeah.
No, I understand not enough, but I mean, obviously there's more revenue coming into the town.
I'm just saying
Not
classroom.
No, he's talking about classroom size. Are we
I hear
gonna
you, but
bulge the classrooms if you have, it depends on what age they are, I guess, right? Where they
They're
fall
definitely,
in.
and hopefully they spread out, but you could get a large number that are coming into 5th grade.
What is a good statistically proven class size? Can you define?
I think we're, around 20 to 22.
Is that where we are in general?
In many cases,
Which is,
yeah.
that's kind of low, isn't it? I mean,
It's still pretty low. We want to stay as low as possible. Under 25 is most
But you say it
preferable.
goes too low, it's not a,
Correct. And I think we've had buildings in town come up. We've had apartment complexes over by River
Yeah.
Bend. And we haven't seen a tremendous increase in the schools. I think it's slowly happening. But if you look at our enrollment, and I did some research, I think it had 20 years of enrollment, we stayed pretty consistent around the 13 to 1400, sometimes a little bit over, sometimes a little bit under, but we've stayed pretty consistent over the past 20 years.
Yeah,
This is a
that's
bigger
gonna
thing
change
though.
dramatically.
And I agree.
Yeah.
But,
Well, it's
but we're really-
1,300 with
this-
285 versus 1,300 with 238, so you're balancing it out. You're keeping it at that number, but a little bit artificially because you're taking in extra kids.
Right, because
Is
we're
that
not
right?
always taking the same amount of students every year.
Right.
We're looking at our needs, and we'll, again, pay particular attention. This year, we didn't know the information last year when we were enrolling students. I wish we did, because we probably would have made some different changes. It would have decreased that 1.5 million, but we would have saved more spaces, but we did not know the housing.
Well, it's a tough call, right, because there's revenue to be had right now.
Right, it is. It's a balance, right?
if you went, say, to 30 kids per class, that's not unmanageable, right?
It's not educational sound for our kids.
I'm
I
just
wouldn't
thinking
promote
in
it.
the back of my
I wouldn't
mind.
promote it as a good practice,
Yeah.
or as best practice. I think that would, again, we want people to want to come here, but we also want to make sure our people that are here want to be here and don't start looking to go elsewhere because class size is too
They
big.
think
Or we
you
lose
couldn't
them.
give the same level of education.
I don't think so. I mean, especially at the elementary, but even at the secondary level, I think you lose that effectiveness if it's too big. I hope we don't get there, but we'll do our best to keep it as low as possible.
We have a lot of aides too, don't we? I mean, the days of a teacher being alone are gone, right?
Oh, in
Pretty
the
much.
elementary level, we have special education instructional assistants, but the only regular ed instructional assistants we have is in our kindergarten. Kindergarten still has, each kindergarten class is an instructional assistant.
Yeah, well,
And I tell you, I've been in the
need help.
first grade classes when they don't have them, and I welcome anyone to come in with
That's
me. It's
right.
a lot, when they're doing centers and they're
No,
working
no.
around, it's not easy.
But not at the higher.
Right. Is it manageable? Sure. I mean, could it happen? Sure. Does it happen in other districts and other places?
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
But it's not best practice. And again, we appreciate what the town gives us. We just want to, we're looking at what the state aid is and how much that is. We look at the percentages. So again, we're looking at FY '22, that the school budget makes up 38.6% of the overall town budget. And in that slide, it breaks it down a little bit more. And then we just looked at some other districts. And again, this is comparison using some DESI data, but also just doing some deep dive into town budgets. So slide number 24 is new, and it just shows the percent, similar to the slide previous, percent of the school's percentage in the town's budget. And I mean, I look at one of the outliers is Carver. I mean, that's a tremendous amount. Their town budget goes into the school budget goes into the town. But again, this is what we hope to get. We know and appreciate that there are limited funds. I'm just trying to point out, what the numbers are showing.
I mean, for me, what just helped is what I asked for, right, of course, but talking about metrics, understanding, okay, you probably brought 4 up, 3 of them were good. One was the need was special needs, and that's primarily what this addresses. So, okay.
Does everyone take school choice?
No.
Every school?
No.
Why wouldn't they? Is space available?
Space.
Yeah.
Space would be a big
Usually
thing.
space.
You can go right on the DESI website and list the schools that take it, and there's, some have taken it and then they stop, some take it for a year.
There's no advantage really to say we're not doing school choice.
Funding, I think.
It's an ATM.
Yeah, the funding helps. But they haven't changed that $5,000 either, and it's
Be
been
nice to
forever.
get
It
that.
almost, it works to the school that they're.
Been 18 years since we started.
Yeah, it's always been
It's the same
5,000.
$5,000.
But we do pay to send students to the online schools. There's 2 online schools, and it's over $8,000. It's like $8,500, I think. So.
But the towns that these children are leaving are making money for them leaving. Right, where their
They're
average per
losing.
but their average per pupil is 13, they're paying us 5.
Well, there's money
in
that they
some
don't get,
respect,
that they're not sent, so
They
it's,
don't get it.
yeah.
Okay.
So this addresses a question about the ESSER funds moving forward. So ESSER funding has been wonderful. We've had 3 different ESSER grants that have come through. Our last grant is $514,000, I believe, and it's going to go through at least FY '24. So the good news: the schools have received the ESSER, the towns have received ARPA money that they're putting to good use as well. With those 3 grants, we've used it for existing staffing needs that we've addressed already. Technology, we've bought teacher laptops and student laptops. Again, things that spending money on the technology that kind of buy ahead. We focused on addressing learning gaps by hiring instructional tutors and an EL tutor. Instructional programs, we've bought curriculum for our EL students. We've also bought assessment data and information called Freckle and STAR. We've had programs with our social, emotional, and academic skills in terms of hiring social work interns, as well as becoming with one of the collaborators, the Family Success Partnership. They've worked with students at risk and families at risk. And last year we offered the Summer Wildcat Academy. So down below are some of the other costs that we are assuming through ESSER for this coming year. So like I said last year, these are things that we're not asking the town for. We've got that 175 kind of hanging out there with those other positions. But a full-time English language teacher is going to be paid for out of ESSER, along with a part-time elementary special education teacher, part-time speech and language pathologist, a part-time school psych or team chair, and a full-time middle senior high school social worker. So that equals out about $218,000.
Total?
All of those together are $218,000.
Not just salary, but
that's all their
everything.
salaries.
Just
Those
salary?
are just those teacher salaries.
Just the salaries.
And the problem with the teacher salaries are we also have to put 9% towards the MTRS retirement. So that comes off the top. So ideally you don't want to use it for salaries because you're charging a premium to do that. But these are needs we have, and we said we're not obviously going to ask the town for that. We're asking for some of it. And the belief in our goal is to take that financial cliff that could be there if we said, all right, we're going to pay everything through ESSER, and then there's this massive cliff at the end. We're trying to lessen the cliff by asking for the 175 this year, and then maybe ESSER gets extended, and we can say, don't need all the 218 next year. but we're not sure. I mean, that's just how we're using it.
That wouldn't include all benefits too.
No, we don't, no. These are just the teacher salaries.
I mean, but wouldn't you want to include that in
So I'm a
total
little,
cost?
I'm a little confused, so this is the ESSER funds and it's paid for these positions.
No, not yet.
Well, going forward,
Yeah.
and you have ESSER for next year.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's the cliff you're talking about, the year after that.
FY '24.
But I'm confused. What's the 175,000 that you're
Those are
talking
through
about?
the positions of the special education teacher, 2 behavior techs, and 2.5
For
one-on-one.
this year.
Okay, so,
They're putting those in the
Those
budget
are
instead
added
of
into our
paying
budget.
them.
These are
okay,
not added into
all
our
right,
budget.
Okay,
Yeah.
so going forward, if the budget stays the same, there'll be 175,000 when this falls off. So
No.
you'll still be short,
No.
no?
No, they're putting it in out of their money. So they'll already be having it in every year. It's gonna roll over in their budget every year.
The
now on.
175.
The 175,
Right.
This
but
is an
we're still
additional,
paying a
this,
218.
well, this is an additional
Right.
218.
But this is an-
on
Those people are
top
still
of the
gonna be staying
175.
employed going
Well,
forward, correct?
correct.
if we have the funding for them.
And neither of these have the, say, 25 to 30% that the town will pick up for health, pension, things along those lines.
That's what I was asking, yeah. Yeah, really, that goes on top of this.
But it's not.
218.
it's not
That's the
tied to
same for every
Yeah.
town in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just saying it's not tied to your budget, but it's still an
Still
increase
there,
to the
yeah.
town budget.
Yeah, but going forward, if these people are to be employed and we don't have ESSER funds, we're going to increase the budget by $218,000.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I
Plus.
wanted to
Correct.
get to, plus
Correct.
everything else. Yeah.
Correct, yeah.
Okay.
Correct.
Now, do they come in at the lowest step possible
That's our goal.
and then move up?
That's our goal. I will tell you though, in any position in education now, probably like any position that you're hiring for, it's hard to find people.
So you gotta go up.
Well, I mean, it's just getting applicants, it's not
Yeah,
easy.
no, I.
To get the
I
qualifications,
get
getting
that.
applicants.
Yeah,
is
you
not
pay
easy.
more, that's all.
Again, this is what we said last year in terms of positions,
Yeah.
one of them was the mental health position. We said,
Yeah.
we're not asking for it now, we'll get there, eventually, but if we continue to find grants to fund us.
Well, the social worker, right, is that considered a mental health professional or no? Oh, okay.
All this being said, though, is we're approaching maximum capacity, right? Chances, I'm guessing, chances are good that the staffing will level out.
I think we add
After
these
this.
positions, yes, I
I
think
mean,
that's,
for
yeah.
years, it
Yes.
shouldn't
I mean,
shouldn't
again,
increase.
and we've said it before, but we've gone very long without these positions of
Yeah.
need. And really, it's the needs for our kids, they're being met in a minimal fashion. And these things, so we're not gonna come the following year and say, but now we need 2 more English teachers and we need this. Where our numbers are the same, it's the services that we're providing.
Yeah.
And again, Mr. Dragonetti said it, I've met with the speech and language pathologists. Their caseloads are, it's not right what we're doing right now. They can't service the kids effectively.
Right.
So this English language teacher, is that a general ed English teacher, or is that English
No.
language teacher for the EL?
Correct.
Okay.
EL students. And I will say that is the area that continues to grow. I won't say daily,
Yeah.
but weekly we're adding
Yeah.
students. And again, with different needs, with different requirements. Some will speak no English, some are very limited English, and we're mandated to follow, an unfunded mandate,
Yeah.
to provide these students with so many hours per day. And it's frustrating because, again, these are things that it's not as easy as saying we're gonna run a business and say everything else just stays the same. Kids are coming and going and changing
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
it's a moving target. Okay.
So that
Wow,
brings us
that's
to
a
the
lot.
end. I want to say, as a member of the school committee, as a member of the budget subcommittee, I've gone over this budget with Mark and Kathy twice now, line by line. I'm Kathy's favorite person. I've gone over every single line, every little increase, every little decrease, and I want to say on behalf of the students and staff in the West Bridgewater School District, we ask for your support of this fiscally responsible budget because it really does meet the needs of the students.
And we
Well,
appreciate the questions, and we appreciate,
I hope they were wise questions and not.
They were great questions. No, it's
know.
good. We want to inform you.
We just
And again,
don't
we wouldn't
understand
push
like
these
you
things
guys do.
If we didn't need it, we
Yeah.
wouldn't push for it. And if we didn't think it was best for kids, we wouldn't do it. I mean, this is why we're here, to support the kids, the staff, and the families, and to provide the community with the best education possible, because we know that that also drives property value and people
Yeah,
want to come here.
yeah,
You have
definitely.
classrooms of 30, you have services and people saying they're not getting serviced appropriately. People don't want to be here. People want to come to West Bridgewater for many reasons. We hope one of them is the school, but they want to come and be in this community.
Well, thank you for, I can only guess at how much work this was
It's a lot
to
of
do.
work.
Thank you for all that you did in here.
If other questions come up after, please just reach out. I
Can-
mean,
can
we
I just-
we want to answer every question that you have.
No, I appreciate that. Can I just focus on a couple of lines here?
Sure.
District technology is a $25,000 increase. Is that for like, what is that for? Is that a person or is that,
That is mainly
Laptops or-
technology, services, it's not people.
it's not people? Okay.
No, that is not people. And that line item is shared by the town, and we're charged 55%
Okay,
of the town amount, and that went up 20 grand this
Okay.
year alone.
okay, that's helpful. And then the teaching services, 370 is all the contractual stuff that we talked
Correct.
about? Okay.
Instructional.
Something went down here.
Technology.
Guidance services is down.
We had 2 guidance counselors retire, and we intend on hiring at lower steps.
Okay.
You were able to get to.
We haven't posted yet, but that's our goal.
I like guidance counselors.
In the student body activities, is that something new we're doing?
That includes sports and extracurricular activities.
And it's going up 42,000, are we adding
Right,
something there, or
which
just in
is-
general it's going up?
It's just going up in general. And that is 1/4% of our entire budget.
We've also, over the last year, added unified sports, unified basketball, so we have coaches for that.
That's good.
So-
No lacrosse yet.
Excuse me?
No lacrosse.
No lacrosse, yeah, no, but we have freshman basketball in there, in JV volleyball. It wasn't in there previously.
You
We were
think the
using them.
family contributions are in line with surrounding
You mean the
towns?
user fee?
Yeah.
It's still pretty low. It's reasonable. It's $200 if they play 1 or 3 sports.
That's
It's
pretty
something
low.
that we may discuss as moving up. It's not something we like to do, is charge fees, but I know the other districts tend to be a lot more.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's not a major moneymaker for us, even if we went up $100,
Yeah, that
it's
could be,
not, it's some, but
yeah, it could be a real burden on
Be
families.
prohibitive for the kids.
exactly,
Yeah.
we don't want that
Bunch
to
of
happen.
kids, it's not gonna work.
And at the end of the day, what would it do
It
to the
isn't gonna
budget?
matter that
I know,
much.
it's not a huge money, huge
Yeah.
increase for us.
Utilities, I see, I think they took a big dip last year, they're going up this year, is that,
Sure.
Yeah, it's to bring it more in line with what they actually cost.
yeah, so we went down probably not, shouldn't have, right?
I don't know, I'm not looking at last year's.
Pardon?
Yeah, I just see the current years, and the actual for 20 was 227, 250 for 21, tiny
Mhm.
dip in 22, and now, with all the increases, this is what we
Yeah.
estimate.
Yeah.
So just to come back quickly to when new people come in.
Yes.
I'm sure you look at their education level, experience. Is that all defined on what they can get, or do you negotiate that?
We can obviously negotiate with all staff when they come in, and if they're, unfortunately, sometimes it becomes a bidding war for people, especially if they're specialized in a world language
Well,
teacher or
sure,
a science teacher.
sure.
But certainly we look at trying to get the most qualified, but at the best price.
Does the teachers' union tell you what you're gonna pay them? or-
There's a salary schedule, but we have some leeway on where they're placed on that.
I'm done.
Any other
I'm
questions?
lost.
I know we asked a lot of questions, and we
Okay.
appreciate your patience. This is a lot of information.
I mean, it goes to town meeting,
Yeah.
it's either up or down, so you don't know.
Right.
All right.
Thank you very
Well,
much.
thank you.
Thank
Have a
you.
nice
Yeah.
night.
Have a good night.
Thanks for
Thank
coming
you.
in.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
was educational, I must say.
That's a lot of stuff there.
Yeah.
Lost my agenda under here.
I think that was it.
No, Mo told me I have to talk about the message for the FinCom book.
Oh,
Good luck
I
with
think
that, Jen.
we went through all these other budgets, right? We got through all of those, I think.
Yeah, so the reason we put that on is this was your last budget hearing.
Yes.
Yep.
So the Board of Selectmen at their next meeting, which is on April 6th, I'll make a recommendation to the board on a budget. The board then will vote and approve whatever budget it is that they want to approve. It will then go to you on April 7th. And then you will then go budget by budget and vote on those budgets, or if you want to make a different recommendation to town meeting, because it is your budget that is actually read off at town meeting. So you'll make that recommendation, you'll take that vote. Historically, we've been able to do that in one night. That takes about 2.5 hours. A couple of years, we broke it into 2 nights, but it was like 1 hour and 1 hour, and I was like, why do it
well,
2
right,
nights?
they said just grind it out.
But I do have it scheduled where on April 7th, if we, for whatever reason, we get bogged down and we just can't get into it, then we have to have another budget hearing in order for you to take that vote.
We need a 2-3 day post for that too.
Yeah, it's 2 days, but usually I post in advance. So I will post on that Thursday, and I will post on the following Monday. And that way, if you don't make it, but I will tell you, if history is a guide, that at 8:50, when you have 3 budgets left, you get highly incentivized to finish it that night.
Yeah.
So, but yes, to answer your question, I'm proactive and post ahead. And then you'll have a couple of weeks off, and then at that point, you'll be voting on warrant articles. After the selectmen decide as to what they want to place on the warrant article. Because just like, for example, all those capital budget requests,
Yeah.
they may not put them all on the warrant, right?
Oh, right.
I mean, they have that exclusive right to do it. So if they decide to put all of them on, great. If they only put some of them on, so be it.
So do we have a date for that one?
At this point, it would be on April 21st.
21st.
And again, normally you make it in through one night. If not, I have that Monday posted as well. I will say historically, 85% of our warrant articles are pretty much duplicates of previous year. So that doesn't require a lot of effort on those ones. So you really
Replacing
normally just,
equipment and,
you know, if we have 50 warrant articles, your discussion point is really on 12 to 15 of them.
Yeah. We usually get through them in
And usually
one
get
night.
through them. So,
Yeah, there are a couple on this one. That's my first time through, but it seems like there's some
On the
questionable
capital
items.
budget.
but you guys haven't voted yet, right? No.
No, tomorrow,
Tomorrow.
3 o'clock.
So in the history, I don't have the calendar in front of me. By mid to late April, I have to start fine tuning the FinCom book. Because one, town council has to review everything. That takes time. It then has to go to the printer, and it takes a week for print. And when it comes back, I then have to post so many days in front of town meeting. We normally do 14 days. State law is 7, but that's because usually we have a special town meeting wrapped in, and we don't do that anymore. I don't like bringing it up to the 7th day, because if there's an issue, a mistake, a problem, I'm out of time. So I would try to do it a little
Printing
bit.
timeline too. Everything's a lot longer than we used to be.
So, so that's why when we say by mid-April, we have to have everything done, and town meeting's not till May 9th, everybody says, geez, that seems so much, there's so much that goes on in between. So that's why we placed the message, because normally you ask the chair to write it, and then she will provide a copy, but usually you guys take a vote to empower the chair to basically come up with a message on behalf of the committee. And then make an attempt to present it on April 7th. And if there's any final tweaks, she usually just has the exclusive authority to make those tweaks. But that's historically, you guys can do whatever you prefer to do.
Yeah. Any volunteers to write the message this year?
Oh, we just voted you in.
You just voted me in when I was.
Can't you copy
There was
and
that
paste?
little mumbling.
Huh?
It was a vote.
Copy and paste?
Yeah, you can send me last year's rate.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll take a stab at it for the next meeting on 4/7. Okay,
Thank you, Jan.
sure. And we picked a
Meetings,
picture
yeah.
last week. Did you see which one we picked?
I did not.
On that, you guys asked me to do a little bit of homework. Jason Ross, the moderator,
Mhm.
actually did it by hand. It was something he did.
Oh,
And
wow.
he actually sold that portrait
Yeah.
and donated all the proceeds to the food pantry.
Oh, that's great.
I saw that, yeah.
Isn't that
So good for
great?
Jason. Good for the food pantry and really good for Jason.
Yeah.
How'd everyone feel on the presentation? Good?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Huh?
It's hard.
So if you, have the
I'm not in love with all
pictures.
the comparisons to other towns,
Oh,
because
right.
I just don't care.
Right, exactly.
But I think they made a justifiable case without that for some special needs.
That one, that's the one we picked.
That's good.
And I don't know.
I agree with you, but unfortunately, the comparison in some areas, and I don't say that it's an absolute necessity in some of the larger towns, are necessary for us to get an idea. We all have our own opinions,
I know.
but,
Personally, I don't care what another town spends or doesn't spend. I want to know where, I would be much happier with more detailed metrics and ways to measure whether or not we are meeting our own goals.
If we're effective.
I think that that'll have to happen over the next couple of years.
Yeah, and I get
Because
that.
school choices are gonna be a big factor.
Yeah.
But I
And
I don't even mean, I mean, graduation rate, kids moving on either to a trade or, like,
Yeah.
kids with a focus as they leave school, like, there's, MCAS.
Yeah.
How many teachers left and went to another school district? Because that's a piece of failure, right? But if that's not happening, then that tells me maybe in that section
Have
alone.
teachers ever let go?
It has happened, it's far and few between.
But that doesn't, to me, that doesn't define success.
Graduation rate-
Like
In the end, it doesn't, you're right. It doesn't.
I
no.
understand that it's not as easy in this black and white, we'd be done in 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just throwing money doesn't necessarily mean it's better either, so
But that's
you
my point.
have
I
a
don't
good
care
point.
about another town. I don't care what anybody else spends. I can tell you I've had 3 kids, well, 2.9 kids go through that school right now.
2.9?
Well, he's got 6 weeks left.
Oh.
Yeah.
So, and it's been nothing shy of a fantastic experience.
Yeah, right.
They all chose to go to college. They have some friends that didn't, and they're fine. You know what I mean? They're successful without it.
Yeah.
But they chose to go to college. Their friends that have chosen to go to college have all gotten into multiple places, good places.
So that speaks for itself.
It does.
Yeah.
Like, so I mean, some of that stuff speaks highly with what goes on with some of the money.
Right.
And I guess that's my point. I don't care what Carver spends. I really don't. It doesn't.
I agree
mean-
with you.
It doesn't mean it's a good.
I agree
I don't
with
mean
you.
to be staring at you. You're just.
And we have a 98% approximately graduation rate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I
So
mean, you
think
can't
there's-
Which,
compare
again-
Duxbury with us, for instance, and the
In some,
economic
you
metrics
don't,
are so
you really
different.
shouldn't compare Duxbury, or you shouldn't compare
Hingham or,
Carver, or even Plymouth. I mean,
Yeah.
they're all overwhelmingly too big in comparison to us.
Yeah.
And I agree with you, we shouldn't be even looking at that. What we should be looking at is, what kind of a matrix can we come up with? And is it gonna help us within the next 5 years, so that we have a better grip in the event we totally lose school choice?
yeah.
Because
Well,
I
at
can't
some-
see
At
us
some
not
point,
losing
it
it
will
totally.
rise
School
and
choice
town
won't
meeting
lose it.
will say no.
We're gonna
School
lose it.
choice won't be as dramatic as losing 1.5 million.
No.
Because school choice is gonna happen because of
Over
the houses
time.
are built.
I
and the
understand
houses
that,
are
yep.
coming in.
It's over time.
Yeah, well, it's not even that. I mean, there'll be an offset, right? Because those houses will probably have 2-3 kids in them versus.
Correct.
But there's still some
Well,
tax.
plus, you're
money,
not,
but
you're not
it's-
losing it entirely. You got kids that are in the first grade that you're gonna have them for 12 more years, 11 more
Unless
years.
I
they
just-
draw, yeah.
Well, you're
draw
right.
choice.
Yeah, we can't
I mean,
even-
the school committees, rightfully so, maybe a little more about feelings. We're a little more about numbers, and it's hard to bridge those two things together to make a clear case.
Yeah, because they're all educators. Well, that's not true. but-
No, that's not true,
No,
but
no.
you've also gotta remember, you have you will have, with the exception of one member, an entirely new school committee within the last 2 years.
But their job, or your job when you were there, was not to look at the budget and go,
No.
that wasn't
No.
your job. No.
No, each individual gets that budget a couple of months ago. And it's a line by line, and then go in and meet with Mark and now it's Kathy.
But when you go over it, you don't go in and say,
No,
we
we
don't
don't.
need
No.
this, we don't need that,
No.
we
Well,
don't
we
need
have to
that.
look at the roles here. The
Yeah.
school committee is meant to be an advocate for the school.
Right,
Well, for
We're
the
the-
children,
For
actually.
the children, right.
yeah.
We're meant to be the checkpoint to control the finances of the town, to make it even for everyone in the town that has to pay for the school. We have to review everybody's budget
Good
to
point.
do the best thing for the people in
For
the
the whole town, yeah, because we have
So-
other things
You have to
too.
think about where your responsibility lies,
Right.
and ours is to be fiscally responsible.
Mhm.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, one of the things, you know, just coming out of the pandemic and seeing what some of these kids are going through, I really think we should probably really seriously think about letting them get those,
I couldn't agree with you more.
you know, it's just these kids.
See, I'm
they
so
need
away
that
from
help.
what effect it's had on kids, because I don't have any kids that
Pandemic
went through it.
tore the
You
schools
do,
apart.
and you do. I mean, you've seen if there've been really negative effects, and
Well, I see it more in my nephews that are in school. They
I've
have
got
their
a-
school choice from Brockton, and they go here and they love it, and they, you know, one's in 3rd grade, one's in 1st, and you know, just not wanting to take a mask off,
Right.
not being, didn't go to school all the time. So I just see a lot of that
The younger, the
challenge.
worse it was too.
Yeah.
Younger
I've got
kids
2
wanna
Can't
granddaughters gonna
understand
start
it,
school in
yeah.
the next 2 years. I
Sorry?
wanna see the school system go.
I missed
I
that.
have 2 granddaughters starting in the next 2 years.
Right.
I wanna see them get the same education that their father and their aunt got. Both my kids graduated from here. Both my kids went to college. Both my kids are doing unbelievable right now.
Mhm.
I want the same thing for my
you
granddaughters.
can look back too, when I went, I didn't have these resources, and I did very well. I mean, what's changed that much?
A lot has
Just to
changed.
counter that,
Society
I mean, in
has
terms of
changed.
special
I'm
ed,
gonna put the
but
fire out at my house, and I want enough people in the ambulance to come get me.
And
Yeah.
not just talking
You know, so I mean,
pandemic, but
there's a
these things
balance and all
change.
that.
Yeah,
The world's changed
the world has changed.
immensely.
oh, no doubt, no doubt. I
You know?
can't- Yeah.
I don't think I'd make it through school anymore.
It would. All right.
All
Are
right.
we all set? So next meeting, April 7th?
Yep.
Thank you. Can I have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Thanks, Mo. Thanks, Jeff. All those in favor?
Right.
Aye.
Anybody opposed?
I don't think
Thank
anyone's
you.
ever opposed, have they?
Thank you, Ben.
Thanks,